Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. We're your hosts, Em and Jay.
Hey.
And today we're talking about Captain Marvel #1, 2019.
Since this is the 5th time Marvel has rebooted Captain Marvel,
The two of us really like comic books as an entertainment medium, but we don't really collect a lot of comic books because they tend to be kind of pricey. Like this one was $4.99, most of these comics are. But the thing is, a lot of the time, the story just isn't strong enough for us to really justify the price.
Disney recently confirmed that Marvel Comics and also Star Wars have been dropping in sales, and seeing comics like these, it's honestly not surprising.
These comics tend to have a lot of problems in really important areas of storytelling, like pacing, tone, and also characters. This comic in particular, I think is really important because the Captain Marvel movie is coming in just a few months. This is the 5th time they've gone back to issue 1 in recent years, and after reading this one, I don't have any interest in going back and reading the others, even if I would have more context for this story.
And if these comics flow together anyway, then what's the point of rebranding it as issue #1? The comic opens up on this giant monster battle being fought by Carol Danvers and Jessica Drew, who are Captain Marvel and Spider-Woman respectively.
Superheroes fighting giant monsters is classic, but the problem here is the tone is all wrong. During this battle, Jessica and Carol talk to each other as if they're out having brunch, not like they're fighting a giant monster, and because of that, there's no tension in this scene. Jessica says, "Oh Carol, I missed you so much when you were in outer space. It's so nice to have you back." And Carol says, "Oh Jessica, you're so sweet. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be back."
The thing is, giant monsters can do a lot of damage really fast. They can knock over buildings like it's nothing and hurt a lot of people just by shifting their weight. The point of this scene is to establish that Captain Marvel has been in space for quite a while, and she hasn't been doing superhero work on Earth. But the dialogue feels pretty forced and unnatural. Their banter doesn't really reflect what's actually going on in this scene during the battle.
It's like they really want to convince us that these two women are friends, but they could have done that by just having them be in sync during their team up against this giant monster. Like they haven't been able to team up in a long time, and now they're getting back into this rhythm. It would have fit better with what the tone should be when it comes to giant monster attacks. Our heroes are so not concerned about this giant monster that they're just standing around having a lengthy conversation. There's no level of urgency, and because of that, this whole fight is kind of boring. The monster eats a little girl and her dog, and Carol goes in after them. They try to make tension by having Jessica say, "Come on, there's no way this is the end of Captain Marvel," but we all know she's fine. Don't you have any faith in your friend, Jessica? She said that she was in space dealing with planet killers. I think she can handle the inside of some monster.
After they defeat the monster and some more relatable banter, Carol has to meet with Tony Stark in order to discuss her image, because she's been in space for so long that a lot of the public is afraid of her because they can no longer relate to her. Tony suggests doing an interview so the public can get to know her better, but Carol isn't thrilled about the idea, though she begrudgingly agrees to it. On the one hand, she is a very physically powerful character, so it does make sense why people would be intimidated by her, but on the other hand, earlier in the comic, we see how she's being praised and accepted by all the people in Manhattan after she rescues them from that giant monster, which makes sense, but it already seems like public persuasion is shifting into her favor just by doing what she's doing. It's like they're telling us that people don't like her or trust her, but we aren't being shown that. Like, it would have been interesting if after they defeated the Kraken, there were people who were whispering, "Captain Marvel's no better than that monster," or something along those lines.
I think a big problem with trying to write characters as being relatable is they end up losing a lot of their individuality. For example, Tony says that he had to come meet her because nobody else wanted to, since she's scary. The thing is, she says things like, "Oh my god," and "Are you secretly a supervillain sent to torture me with dumbness?" And I just don't feel like those those are things that someone who is described as being scary would say. They want her to feel like she's been away for a long time, she hasn't even been on Earth for a long time, so she's trying to readjust back in, but at the same time, she's feeling very relatable, and I think that those two things end up clashing, and so it kind of ends up hurting the character, because we're supposed to feel for her trying to get back into her superhero life, but she already feels like a relatable person. Some of this dialogue's a little over the top, though. I think having all of this relatable dialogue actually ends up hurting the characters, because they kind of end up bleeding together. Carol and Jessica felt very similar, like they had a lot of the same personality, and even Tony feels very relatable, even though he's a very different character, but some of his dialogue still crosses into that relatable territory. So these characters don't feel like they have very unique voices. Tony asks Carol for another favor. There's a kid from Avengers Academy who they were afraid would turn to the dark side without the proper guidance, and Tony believes that Carol is the one who could help her. Her name is Jennifer, although the kid from earlier who got swallowed by that Kraken's name was Jenny, so it's kind of weird that they would have two characters with the same name in the same book. Why not just give this background character a different name? Jennifer goes by Hazmat, and she has toxic powers, but she's having trouble controlling them. Carol tells her that she understands having issues with her powers, including having them stolen from her, and she says she'd like to help her out. We were on board with this idea, even through all the forced relatable dialogue. Jennifer seems like she has a lot of potential as a character, and seeing Carol help out a younger possible hero would probably be really good for her, because it could connect her back to Earth, and maybe it could even help her public image, because the public could see more of her, and they could see her interacting with others and helping others out, including helping to train the next generation of heroes. But then they drop all of this and have Rhodey come in. Carol and Rhodey used to date, but then Rhodey wasn't alive for a little bit, but now he's back, so things are kind of awkward, which they make sure the audience is fully aware of. So then Jennifer walks off to go do touristy things because things here are too awkward. We don't see her again for the rest of this comic, and honestly, it just comes off like her not having control of her powers isn't that big of a deal. Rhodey and Carol end up going on a date. Relationships in superhero stories can help to ground the hero, so they're not a bad idea, but this was not the right time. We wanted to see what was gonna happen with Carol trying to help Jennifer. If they wanted to bring Rhodey in, I think they should have done it when Carol was alone. Maybe she's a little confused about everything. She's happy to be back on Earth, but she's also dealing with this whole situation of the public not necessarily trusting her and her trying to connect with people, and Rhodey could have been a way for her to get back into connecting with people. Carol actually did pretty well with Jennifer. She got Jennifer to open up to her pretty quickly, so it doesn't seem like she's really having that much trouble with people. Instead of telling us these things, they really needed to show us, because telling us doesn't really do anything. Their date gets interrupted by a reporter from the magazine she's supposed to do that interview with. They go for a walk where Carol explains that she wants to reschedule, only to be interrupted by a supervillain, Nuclear Man. He's a Fantastic Four villain who's from this alternate future where he rules and women are subjugated by men. We only know this because we looked it up on Wikipedia. There are a lot of comics, okay? Sue us. Anyway, of course they had to bring this guy into this comic. He's this over-the-top misogynist, and there's no subtlety or nuance to his character. Apparently, he only showed up because he heard Carol Danvers was back, and I guess he wanted to see what all the fuss was about. He's the only character who doesn't have relatable dialogue, because all of his dialogue is just over-the-top misogynist. He demands that Carol bow to him and things like that. It's all very predictable, and it's not very fun. As they're fighting, Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor show up because Rhodey called them in, but it looks like Carol took care of him, only for him to get up and hit them with a will weakening ray. He ends up opening a portal, and he grabs the reporter lady and drags her through. Carol goes in after them, and the other heroes try to follow, but apparently they can't get through the portal. They say that Captain Marvel made it look easy. I find it really hard to believe that none of them could get through. Even Thor?
I guess they're trying to push that Captain Marvel is the strongest Avenger and probably the strongest character in the Marvel universe.
I just don't know if I'm buying it. It's just a portal. The portal closes and Carol's the only one who got through. Rhodey says that by the time they manage to get through, there won't be anything left for them to do because Carol will have taken care of everything. And then it shows this page that looks like it's from Mad Max or something. I guess she's been there for some time because her hairstyle is different and their clothes are different. These are things that don't happen in a day.
Since he kidnapped the reporter, she can write a story about how Carol saved her and that she's a hero and people should like her. However, if this is going to be the setting of this comic and this is where it's going to really focus on, then I can't help but question what the point of the first issue was. It introduced multiple conflicts that were ultimately dropped, not to mention the pacing was pretty drawn out.
We're told that the people of Earth don't have a connection with her and they don't seem to trust her, but we didn't really see any of that in this comic. No one seemed to have a problem with her. We had pages of a giant monster fight where no one had a problem with her. And the setting for this whole comic was New York City. So you would assume that that's the setting where this comic is going to be taking place. But then we get this page of Mad Max Captain Marvel. Maybe we should have introduced this setting in this actual comic and not as a preview for next time. Like maybe we should have actually seen the other side of the portal. We could have had a few pages of that. I thought the point of this comic was to get Carol back on Earth, but then they changed the setting from New York City to this alternate Mad Max timeline. This is not the everyday superhero setting that Carol has been missing. Why would you bring her back to that just to take her away from it immediately? If she's been in space this whole time, why stick her in this futuristic Mad Max setting when she was supposed to be in an everyday city setting?
We don't know how long this storyline is going to go on for, but it's already really predictable. Women who are subjugated by men rising up to defeat the patriarchy. It's weird how this comic was selling us on it being a classic superhero story, only to get thrown into this Mad Max style story. Why not just show the story for what it is and have this introduced to begin with?
I think this comic will do okay because the Captain Marvel movie is coming and I think that people are curious, but it doesn't get us interested in getting back into comics. It tries really hard to be relatable and to also say something and have a strong message, but it ends up being way too over the top. And not in a fun way. It's more like a hello fellow kids kind of way.
But that was just our opinion. We'd love to hear what you guys thought. Do you think this was a good start to Captain Marvel 2019? Or do you think it was pretty lackluster? Feel free to leave a comment down below and like and subscribe if you want to see more of our content. We'd really appreciate it and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching guys. Bye.
Bye everyone.